They'll blanket you in Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Don't need that cottage promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are more, just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed, disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of own nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Today on Rogueways, we have a synchronistic alignment that brought Howdie Mickoski to my attention, and I am so grateful that it did, because he is a badass beyond measure, having traveled to various ancient sites and having studied history with a fine-tooth comb, and most importantly, with an analytical and open mind. Howdie did not let academia and assumption blind him to what, upon further inspection, seemed almost obvious. And that is that we have been either lied to or led astray by useful idiots. Probably both. Howdie has offered many books, including Exposing the Expositions, Falling for Truth, and The Power of Then, and is here to talk with us today on Rogueways. And Howdie, we are so grateful that you are. Thank you for being here with us.
Thanks. And you know, that introduction, because for people, I didn't write that. She wrote that introduction, and it's outstanding.
Thank you.
Actually.
I try.
Really?
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I like to my guests to know how honored they really are and how much we appreciate them. So I'm glad that you enjoyed it. And I do want to remind all of our Rogue Warriors listening out there that you can connect more deeply with messages from your higher self and spiritual allies through tarot reading or guidance sessions with me. You can grab a highly powerful orgone and blessing infused pendant or art, and you can grab my novels signed and delivered to you, all from rogueways.org. So go check it out, and also join the community at rogue.locals.com if you want to interact with some of the best people in the world, I'd say. But Howdie, I always start with a pointless question of the episode, and the pointless question I was going to ask you is what your favorite piece of art or human creation is at this moment in time. And you could take that to mean whatever you want, as far as like what kind of art, or, you know, what kind of genre or medium or whatever.
Okay. Actually, because it's just a couple of days ago in my mind, I'd been thinking about talking with some friends, where would we ever travel if we ever got the world back? And one of the parts of my travel was to be down in Naples again, because there's some specific statues in some of the cathedrals there, which are impossible to carve. They're the ones you've probably seen that have the netting there, or the way the hair is done. And you really can't carve marble like that in any way that it's supposed to have been carved in the 15 or 1600s. So right now, I would like to go and see it up close. I've seen, of course, just the photographs of those. I've been through many places in Italy, but not into that cathedral in Naples. So that would be on my list to try to ask, how could that have been done?
Yeah, it's so interesting, because I had a friend a while ago who was talking about, you know, how these statues could have been made. And the two of the sort of ideas that came up was like, was it poured somehow, that we don't understand that this kind of stone could have been liquefied maybe and then molded, or I still don't understand how you'd make a mold that perfect, you know, or was it some sort of like maybe magic or technology we don't understand that would turn a body into stone? You know what I mean? I don't know. Do you have any ideas on how it might have been?
I've heard stuff similar. You know, I would probably guess somehow, given the knowledge I have of all of the amazing things that the ancients did with stone and how they were able to carve granite and basalt so perfectly and so smoothly with the equivalent of laser cuts. So I would be more leaning somehow that maybe they made the stone much less soft, you know, they actually somehow softened it during the process. How you soften marble enough to carve it and then harden it again, I have no idea.
Yeah, and like keep its integrity somehow still while doing that. Like, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, and like you say, there's so many things that seem from the ancient world that seem technologically way more advanced than us. So it is hard to imagine sometimes what could have been going on, you know, in any arena, whether it's statuary or somewhere else. But Before we jump into some of that, if you want, I really like to get the perspective on, or the background that you have. So maybe like what your childhood was like, or what kind of like led you into any of this in the first place.
Ooh, trauma. A
Trauma.
nightmarish trauma, nightmarish existence.
This is the common thread through almost every guest I have as an alternative thinker, whatever realm they're in, is that they almost always have undergone pretty severe childhood trauma.
Right, you have to, because if the dream is good, you don't want to wake up. You only are interested in waking up when it becomes a nightmare.
Good
So
point.
in some way or form, there has to be some sort of nightmarish quality. Not that my whole life was a nightmare, of course, but enough of it that pushes you along. So
Yeah.
you could say like my teenage years were generally pretty good. I had a lot of fun at my high school, really enjoyed my life, enjoyed the people I was with. But I had a psychopath for a father.
Yeah.
And in my last year before I was finishing university, he stole all my money. And this was a very, on so many levels, of course, not just from the emotional level, but also from the physical level of how do I finish my last year and get my degree out of this. It was,
Wow.
yeah, that was a challenging time. Not that, of course, others have gone through way worse than me, of
Yeah.
course, but it was at the time it was also very challenging because of the time frame. That's just when you're moving from young adult into beginning your male journey, and you're beginning to sort of find your purpose in the world, or how you're going to fit in. Or so at this moment, that part got pulled out, right?
Right.
So I didn't really make that adjustment easily. So I went through a couple of years. I tried to start a business that went bankrupt. Kind of everything went bad. And then an ex-girlfriend got murdered in
Wow.
1994. And that, I would say, was the start of the change of everything for me, because I had to start really questioning the story of life that we were always fed, of how you become successful in the world. She had done every single one of those things, and now here she's 24 and she's dead.
Yeah.
So something in the story isn't right. And that began a very difficult inward spiraling of questioning my assumptions and beliefs and what I thought. And it sort of took about 3 years of more difficulty, more challenge. Even though it was spiritual work, but I wouldn't have classified it at the time. Like, some of it was just denial, some of it was just becoming a manipulative jerk, some of it was becoming really nice. It was, but when I was really at a low point in 1997, and I was kind of at the point where I thought I'd like to kill myself. I just didn't know the best way to do it. A television program came on called This Old Pyramid, National Geographic pyramid building program, and I watched the program, and it was a truly moment of grace, because it was like, that's my life. That's what I'm supposed to do.
Wow.
I'm supposed to get in that pyramid, and I'm supposed to find an ancient secret that's attached to it, so to speak. But just to make the story short, we can get into all of these stories as we go along. But I started realizing I can't possibly have any hope of understanding the ancient world if I don't understand the ancient mind. And so I went in search of those who could help me understand an ancient way of thinking. So over time, I got lucky to meet a Korean Zen monk, several native Indian medicine men on their reserves, a Qigong doctor from Beijing, a medicine man shaman from Brazil. Like, they kind of just kept appearing for a number of years, along with doing a lot of, we'll call it, inner alchemic work,
Hmm.
really pushing myself to test the mind, test reality, test everything. That went about 4 or 5 or 6 years. Um, did my first trip to Egypt in 2004. That book was about ready to be done in first version in 2005. And then later that year, probably because you heard some of the other interviews, where I fell in a canyon and had the death experience. And in that death experience, realized that a lot of what I had classified as standard spiritual work is just a load of crap. When you, in that experience, recognize that what I'd always thought as myself doesn't actually exist, that it's in a sense, a character in a dream, right, or a character in a movie. And that if you do it right at that point, if you at that point take time 2 years or so of kind of a lot of alone time, really integrate that, really deal with what that means, have it get a new interaction with reality and yourself, you can come out of that 2 year period very clear, very clean. I spun right back into the world very quickly. And so my last 15 years has been very, very difficult. It's only been in the last year or two I've started finally noticing the waves are kind of getting a little smoother. So one of the things I started doing when I wrote the book Falling for Truth was kind of to share some of the story, and not so much the story of hopefully so much of what I did that sort of got me prepared for the canyon, but more if someone else is in that same place, can they avoid some of the mistakes and the traps I went through so they can navigate the transition much smoother than I did. And yeah, then takes us to about a year ago. I'll just finish it and then you can go from there, where I came back from Florence, had been studying cathedrals and the type of energy buildings and structures that they might really be. Got extremely interested in the world's fairs, like sort of like just again similar to the way it was with when I saw the pyramid, and realized that we're dealing with a massive lie of unbelievable proportions. And I spent about 8 months last year writing a book on the world's fairs. And for some reason, it's like my wife says it hit some kind of zeitgeist like 6 months ago, and it's kind of like it's just doorways all of a sudden have been opening because of people being really interested in that subject. And now here we are.
Well, that's fascinating. There's so many threads off of there that I would love to talk about. But one thing that's fascinating that I want to underscore just for people out there who are also kind of chipping away at their own, calling, what they're passionate about, and maybe a lot of times it feels like people aren't really noticing or don't really care or don't really appreciate it, but it, maybe took you this long before you hit, like you said, the zeitgeist at the right time, at the right thing that kind of got everyone to be like, holy crap, this guy's rad. You know what I mean? Like I just would like to encourage people with that little bit, because it seems common amongst a lot of people who are working towards what they love. But I also want to,
and it's also a lot of inner work. You have to, you can't just kind of, it's not just that you're waiting, you have to be making changes internally to how you're seeing yourself and how you're seeing the world. So those are concurrent. It's like you say, some patience on one hand, work on the other.
yeah, good point, because you are exactly it's hard to describe to people, I think, that level of self-work, because I think that people expect it to be this sort of grand experience like you kind of describe with, falling into the canyon and having this near-death experience. But the things that seem to be the most profound in our lives are sometimes the most subtle moments where we're like, oh, I've been doing this for years and I should maybe think about doing this a slightly different way, or interacting with people like this instead, or healing this part of me that likes to react like this that I didn't even think about before, Do you agree that it can be that subtle?
Oh yeah, we can get into that if you want it later on and really talk about kind of what it really is and what it's not. Like you say, people kind of wait for some grand experience where, I don't know, God reaches down from the heavens and blesses you with some sort of thing, and
Yeah.
that ain't going to happen. What's going to happen is you're going to keep going into real difficult areas, and you're having a choice of, do you want to examine what's there? Do you want to turn the focus within and really ask some deep questions, or do you want to play games in the external world? That's all it is. So a lot of the people who are really actually advancing and truly taking steps on this path don't even know they are, because it's not what the books say.
Yes.
They're doing what they know naturally. They feel like, I have to do this. I don't know why. I've got to work on this stuff, and it is the real stuff, actually.
I absolutely love that. It's very true in my experience as well, and I love to hear it. And it's funny because before we were starting today, I write my sort of intro and outro, and I kept wanting to describe you as like a shaman or a mystic, but I don't know you. But this was just coming to me, And as I hear your story, I'm like, oh, you have all the traditional steps of the shamanic path, actually, So I don't know if you ever consider yourself as that type of person. Labels are not really important to me, but it's just funny because I was like, I have no reason to think of him like this, but it's like coming to me, and here you are describing, those initiatory sort of experiences, and it's very interesting.
It's I guess I wouldn't call myself that in any way. I mean, I've met and been with extremely special medicine men, so I can't put myself in their
right
category in any way, shape, or form. I just maybe have a little bit of things that have come along. But I do know that even way back before any of these experiences happened, a number of women that I had dated, like in the 1990s, had always said I reminded them a lot of the main character in the novel Bridges of Madison County, not the Clint Eastwood movie version, the way the character was described in the book. And I had two or three had told it, so I finally read the book, and okay, yeah, I can kind of see how they see me as in that way. And he was sort of thought of in this sort of some kind of
Like a
shamanic
mystic.
half, yeah, kind of in the world, not in the world at the same time. So I guess even before there was this sense of work directly, there was something else that others sort of sensed or picked up long ago.
And I love that too, because I feel the same in that I look back and I have this history of like, rampant drug abuse and like horror, and people ask me like, well, how did you change, like your life from that to this? And I'm like, well, I don't think that I necessarily changed. I always had these same exact aspects of myself. They were
Mm,
just layered under all of this bullshit that I had to peel away, So
right.
um I think that is something that is good for people to hear too, because if people are struggling or feel like, oh, I'm nothing special, or I'm like, oh, it's always bad or whatever, it's like, well, it is for now, it seems that way. But like you said, you're kind of just playing a character in this realm, and there's a lot more going on maybe than you think. And so, I think everyone's here for a reason, honestly. But if you could share sort of the like message or encapsulation, if that's even possible, of your work with every human on the planet somehow, what is something that you would like them all to know or understand or hear?
Wow, it would just be to have people ask if they can what's true.
I love that. And how do we know what's true?
And how then, yeah, so already you're having to take it back before you even start. Yeah, what is truth? What does that even mean? What does it? And the person who I gravitated the most after my experience was a gentleman who had died a few years previous to me. It was Richard Rose of the Tat Foundation, and he had some very clear directional pointers, and one of which was you can't go looking for truth. You have to instead go looking for false. Look for what's not true, drop it, get rid of it, and continue moving. So you with the drugs is a really good example. That's it's a major into the world. It's about just about you, and it's saying being on drugs is for me is false.
Yeah.
So once it goes and you've dropped it, you've actually moved one step closer to truth, even though you have no idea what truth is. You've actually moved a step closer by just dropping something that's false.
I love
and
that.
it and so that works in any way, shape, or form. So okay, I happen to do a lot of stuff with history just because that's my connection point or something that I feel excited to work with. But it doesn't matter whether you go into science or religion or government, or it doesn't really matter, religion, spirituality, yourself. It's just the easiest way is, well, what can I find that's not true? And as soon as you find not true and you start dropping it, it starts getting a little easier and easier. Of course, at some point you'll probably get to the point where it's, well, actually, wait a minute, everything's not true.
Yeah.
But that's down the road. You have to start with where you are, and it's just simple. Look for something false, either in your life or something external, what you believe, and stop acknowledging it.
That's really beautiful. So it's like so simple. It doesn't necessarily mean
Yeah.
it's easy though, because what you described too is like eventually you get to the point where you're like, oh my God, nothing is real. And like, does anything matter? And is anything real? And at that point, I feel like you can either feel very free, which is how I felt. I was like, oh, well, this is awesome then. Like, we can do anything with this and we can start unpeeling anything we want and look at everything as possible. And this is great. Or you can spiral into like insanity, right? Like, oh my God, if nothing's real, like what is going on here? And how do you have any insight into that sort of division and how you could play it out or how you could navigate it?
Oh yeah, I've been through a lot of difficult parts in all of this, and you know, one of the things you could say, that's what you would classify as standard spiritual work, which has I tend to undervalue it from the long perspective, but not to completely devalue it, because part of what its job is to do is prepare the mind and even the body that should a huge experience just happen spontaneously to you, you can handle it.
Yeah.
Your mind and your body will deal with the experience. And I think a lot of not all, but many of the people that wind up in mental institutions or muttering on the street or whatever, a number of them, if you actually start talking to them, some of them are extremely profound actually
Mm.
with their knowledge, but they weren't prepared for the experience, and they had no help on the outside for someone to say, hey, you know what, you're not actually crazy, you've just seen something that the rest of the world doesn't really see. We can work through that with you. So because they didn't have any of that help or any of that preparation, their mind just shattered, and they're kind of just, this world is kind of over for them. But
Yeah.
if you could get some of those people early enough, no question, you could steer a lot of them probably into a much lucid, very clear living. So that's a big part of this, is that the bigger the, I mean, even one of the earliest spiritual experiences that I had when I did my first hour outside at night. Uh, I've been doing this for maybe 3 weeks or something, 4 weeks, and I was told by somebody, you should go out and spend an hour in the middle of the forest at dark and just sit there.
Mm.
And I remember maybe 20 minutes in, there started to be these gray blobs that started sort of peeking out from behind the trees at me. And of course, your first natural experience is, I'm frightened.
Yeah.
I'm scared. But I also remember saying, I'm staying here for an hour. I said I would sit here for 1 hour. So I don't care what this is. I'm not going anywhere. and and I waited it out. And eventually, after a certain amount of, I guess, attempted scaring of me, they just stopped.
Huh. So and why would they want to scare you, whatever those were?
You
Just
could
to
call them,
play?
I would call them almost like, spirits of the woods, or things that maybe look after forest or whatnot. And they're just
Hmm.
sort of, who is this person? Why is, because in general, humans are not kind to nature. So nature automatically, I think now has, well, while it wouldn't have been the same way thousands of years ago, I think nature has just a general concern when humans are in their presence,
Hmm.
and they want to check out the human a little bit carefully to know, what are they here for. So I think that was kind of what was going on. It's just a little bit of a check on me. Why am I there? What am I doing? Am I a problem for it? And then once they kind of, whatever they did to say, I don't think he is, then they could just leave me alone.
That's so cool. It's almost like when you meet like a maybe not even traumatized, but just sort of a child who's been through a lot. They will do the same sort of thing where they're like poke at you and be like, "Are you gonna explode if I poke at you? Are you unsafe for me? Like, or can you handle me and be like chill with me, and then we're good after I test you a little bit."
Right. Yeah.
That's
I guess something similar like that. So, I mean, all these things are going on constantly. It's just, how aware are we of what's going on in our environment?
and how much do we sort of trust it and believe it, because a lot of experiences that I've had, and you've probably felt the same way, is you when you're first starting to experience it, you kind of have to go through every single possible, like, oh well, my eyes must be like blurry, or like, or I must be and then eventually you're like, I don't know, am I crazy, is this crazy, like, or have I gone insane, or is this actually real? And it takes a while to, I think, sometimes just accept that, like, yeah, this is really happening actually. Do you
I,
feel like
I
that?
guess I'm pretty thankful that I was, in one sense, quite prepared when I started my work. And then, like I said, I had really good teachers. Like, I mean, really, really good people that I worked with. So I had some really good direction in what I was doing. So things had to go to a really intense place before I started wondering, am I going crazy? Actually,
Yeah.
whatever was happening was quite well accepted, as strange as it might have been. It wasn't until I got to a point where I could see through walls, and I wasn't sure if I would sit on a chair and the chair would still be there when I sat on it. And it wasn't until I literally was at the point where reality was just not solid at all anymore, and I couldn't trust it to be anything. That was the kind of moment I started thinking, I think maybe I'm going nuts here. But of course I wasn't. I was just, you're moving so deep into the hologram that you're literally experiencing a fluid universe, which is how the universe really is. It's just our mind is not prepared for a non-static universe.
And in its rigidity, we create rigidity.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, kind of back and forth. This sort of it's doing it to us, and we're doing it back to ourselves. Yeah,
Wow. It's like this endless like reaction cycle or
right.
something.
But once you're in an experience like I was having, it's also, you're pretty alone then with it, because no one else can possibly is having that at the same time as you, right? So you're very alone with it. And I had to learn to just keep my mouth shut, because if I said anything to anybody during that period, they thought I'm just going off the deep end.
Yeah.
So I had to learn to just keep that quiet and yeah,
And just be with it.
do it.
Do you communicate then with any of these sort of entities that are everywhere, honestly? Or was that experience kind of, you just encountered them and moved on?
Um, yes and no. I mean, some people are just that's more their what's the word I'm looking for? I sometimes forget English
Like
words now that I don't live in North America.
like
Uh,
wheelhouse or something or
Predilection is
oh,
the
okay.
word, right? The
Yes.
thing that they are a specialist at. So it just happens to be not my specialty field, but I have done some of it, yeah. And I still, if I'm on like what I guess something will be mostly known to people like a sort of a journey type thing where you're going into another realm to get information, then you're dealing with whoever or whatever is in that realm to share information with you. But beyond that, I don't really try to push too far into it. But I know a few other people who are really good in those fields. It's just not me.
Yeah. Well, I like that too, because I think a lot of people feel like there's only one reason to experience certain spiritual truths, and that is to like get to that point where you're like channeling or you're in communication or direct connection. But it's nice to hear that there's many purposes and reasons to be experiencing these various things, and it's not always about just one skill set, or predilection. um, and then I was wondering, because I think a lot of people get to the point where they're like, they've been sort of seeking a lot of these experiences, and they've been reading the books. And like you were talking about the
Mm,
standard spiritual sort of path,
yeah.
and they're wondering, like, well, why haven't I had some of these? Or like, why didn't I meet really great teachers? And they're like,
Mm.
searching. And I know what I feel about that. But what do you think about why did you come across all these great teachers and these amazing, direction pointers and whatnot?
What would you say? What would your answer be to that? To
Well,
your question first.
I feel like that thing we were talking about earlier, where it's sort of like these very subtle, possible, I don't know if you want to call them lessons or, personality unveiling or, growth, whatever it is. I feel like there's a lot of that people don't necessarily realize is literally in the way of them perceiving what's already there, like kind of screaming and waving at them. For example, I think sometimes people think a teacher has to be older, wiser, a specific rank in a specific tradition, and it might actually literally be like a child on the street that you're never going to talk to again after that moment. So I think a lot of times
Mm.
people don't see it even when it's happening, and I think a lot of times there's like little tiny. I don't want to call it character flaws because I don't want people to think there's something wrong with them, but I don't know what to call that. Where you know what I mean? Those subtle changes and adjustments you make as you grow and progress that are in their way that they're just not seeing.
That's interesting. Um, but if I would answer that question, I would say the reason for it was my commitment.
Hmm.
That after I had seen that program and decided this is what I'm going to dedicate my life to doing, everything from that for a number of years anyway after that was only based on one question: is what I'm going to do right now going to help me get closer to the wisdom in ancient Egypt or not?
Hmm.
If the answer was yes, I moved forward. If the answer was no, I didn't do it. And it didn't matter how good the other thing was. I literally just said no, it's going to take me away from what I wanted. So it's this intense uh, intention and commitment, and I kept that commitment. I mean, I put a lot of hours in every day, and I did certain things at certain times of the day, and it didn't matter where I was. A really good example was I was a friend took me to some work party at 4 o'clock or something afterwards. Oh, it's 3 or something, and it was nice. It was a barbecue, and okay, I talking to some people I didn't know. But when 4 o'clock came, well, that was my time for qigong,
Hmm.
and so it didn't matter that I was at the party. It didn't matter what was going on. That was my time for qigong, and so I just said, well, I'm going to the park now. I'll see you in 45 minutes. And it was just, again, that it was a lot of this stuff. It was just that I'd made certain commitments, and so I was going to keep the commitment no matter what. And I think when you I have a chapter in my book, Falling for Truth, just about commitment, because if you're willing to make a commitment and stick to it, the universe has to start in some way responding to you, or like you say, removing some of those doors, because some of the things that the universe throws at you is just to see, do you really mean what you say?
Yes.
So yeah, that's a big one. Is just a lot of problems stop if you're willing to follow through on your commitment. And the problem is most people can't make a big commitment, so you have to start small.
Hmm.
Say I'm going to walk to work for the next 4 days, and then walk to work for the next 4 days. I'm going to clean the dishes right after I have dinner for 7 days or something. Literally, it's just that small. But once you've made one commitment and you've gone through it and you've done it and you've proved that you can do what you said, you can start building bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger commitments, and you'll know you can start keeping all of those too. So again, some of these things are really simplistic,
Hmm.
but they have great power in them.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. A beautiful thought. And I have heard a story from someone, I don't know if anything like this happened to you, where they have this same idea about like you have this commitment, you have this vision and you don't swerve from it, and the universe almost like congratulates you for, well, that's not the right word, but they support you in that, right? But this person talked about how this multinational corporation invited them to have a position there that would have been like, super lucrative, like millionaire status or higher, and very
Right.
cool, traveling around the world and this very prestigious sort of thing. But if they took that position, they wouldn't have been fulfilling their commitment and their role, and so they didn't take it. And at
Yep.
the time, it felt like this failure, almost like who wouldn't take this job or position. But actually, going the other way ended up giving them not only that commitment that they had originally committed to, but also lucrative and all these things, which is a nice addition too. But do you feel like anything that sort of major has happened to you as well?
I'll just read you a quote first from Moby Dick, from Captain Ahab, right?
Awesome.
Because Captain Ahab is the personification of commitment. He's going after the white whale, which represents his egoic mind, and he is not going to be stopped until the whale is his mind is taken care of, right? And he says, "Swerve me, ye cannot swerve me, else ye swerve yourselves. The path to my fixed purpose is laid with iron rails, whereupon my soul is grooved to run."
I love
You know,
that.
that's and you can feel that's power. That's power. So yeah, once you get this sense of, and what we're talking about, that those are later commitments, of course, these when things start to get much bigger. So it's most people will, the average person will be, if you say, well, what do you want to commit to, what do you want to put your intention to? I don't know, which is an honest answer. I don't know.
Yeah.
Someone asked me when I was 20, I don't know. But start then just with making the commitments you do make. Don't, if you say you're going to the party on Saturday, you're going. That's it. You said you're going.
Yeah. There's
Because as
a
soon as you, yeah, as soon as the universe knows that, oh, if we just do this, if we make you ill, or we do this, or Richard Rose had a great story. Sorry, I'm just sharing all sorts of stories, but
yeah.
he was starting to do or talks, I guess, with a very small group after his experience on every Friday night. And what started happening was every Friday his wife or his kids got sick and he had to cancel. So finally he told them, I don't care if you're dying on the floor with gunshot wounds, I'm going to do these talks. Of course, the illness is stopped.
Wow.
Eventually, the universe got the point that it didn't matter what they were going to throw at him; he wasn't going to pay attention to it anyway. And this is a part of it. It's and again, some people then think, well, if I have really good commitment, nothing bad will happen to me. Well, no, you have to deal with. There's going to be trauma and challenge, and things are going to be thrown at you. But you can eliminate some things that you don't have to deal with just from the standpoint of, the more committed, the more you trust your commitment, and the more you trust the direction you're going to walk, certain things just aren't there for you.
Yes, it's absolutely true. And I feel like there's an aspect of it too that connects with something we were talking about earlier about being prepared when the moment comes. If you've practiced this commitment over and over again and you've experienced it over and over again, there could be a time, might be spiritual, it might be otherwise, where it feels like there's no way you could do this thing. But because you've had all of this
Yeah,
practice, like doing the
right.
thing that felt like you couldn't do it in that moment, you're like, nope, doing it anyway. And you can do almost impossible things, but you have to be prepared, with that practice.
Yeah,
And I feel
most
like
definitely.
that's the point of probably most practices, if we're going to apply it to that, like Qigong or, spiritual traditions, is that being prepared for some specific moment that you may need that level of not just commitment, but determination, I guess, or intention.
Yeah, determination, commitment, attention, and just openness. That would be another. That would be another keyword. Keywords, yeah, like that. I would add also keywords would be courage. Courage is really required. Most that stops a lot of seekers. A lot of seekers have a wish for something, but they don't have the courage to actually have to deal with what their wish really is.
Good point.
They want the easy way out. They don't want to have to deal with the challenge. So and that's a really good example of the world today. A lot of people say a lot of stuff, but you watch their actions out there right now, and they have no courage whatsoever.
Yeah.
Another one would be honesty. Really starting to gain not so much necessarily an honesty with the people out there and who you talk to, but honesty with yourself. To really get to feel, this is what I feel is important to me. This is what I want to do, and I can say my own things. Every time I got into a larger problem in my life, generally I wasn't being honest with something about myself. That would be a core. So yeah, commitment, honesty, courage, and the fourth one would be more like just things that store energy, things that are not, so your energy, which is finite, is not being wasted. It's being used well and stored well. If someone's doing those four things, they're probably moving ahead for sure.
They're on like the master path. And it's funny
Well, they're
because
just moving.
this is the thing we're talking about too, where it's like it's simple, it's straightforward, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's very easy. But
Right.
it gets easier and easier at the same time that, like we were talking about, you may be thrown like a pretty major challenge, which won't be easier, but I guess you're more and more prepared for it, at least.
Hopefully you have the energy to handle it. And of course, the most important challenge you're going to get is death.
Yes.
You're going to get it. Everyone's going to get it at some point. The trick is, can you get it sort of before you actually die, before you actually have to have the physical body die? Can you go through a death experience before that, which will be a death experience, but will you have the energy to cross over, see what's on the other side, gain certain knowledge, and have the energy to return? Mm-hmm. That's where the power lies, right? A person like Bunyan, his quote is something like, die before you die, and then do whatever you want. It's all good.
I love that. And you described that in your near-death experience, this sort of like the actual ego death. And I think maybe you can get there with various substances, and maybe that's helpful. I don't know. It doesn't really feel like the path for me after all that I have done in the past. But is there some other way that people can like induce that, first death in practice for the real death?
No. No. It comes or it doesn't come.
Yeah.
It's up to something way beyond the little me. We can only, awakenings and accidents, you can only do things that make yourself accident prone, right? I generally recommend against drugs for anything.
Me too.
The reason being is that while certain drugs do have openings for things, I mean, there were reasons that cultures have used them for thousands of years. The problem is while you're working with the drug, there's two issues. First, the drug is in control. So the drug is the leader on that trip, and you can't back out because you want to. Now, I don't want to go further. You're stuck until the drug is over with you. So that's one problem, is you're kind of not in control. You can't step out whenever you want. The other is, as probably you know from your experience, while the drug gives you something, it asks for something in return.
Good point.
And often what it asks for is quite a big thing from you. So it's this always, I get this from it, but not too many people are asking, but what am I giving? I was an alcoholic for a lot of years. And so for me, as part of that thing is, what was I having to give up all the time for what I thought the alcohol was giving to me? So that's why I kind of suggest, yes, there are other ways to go, whatever path you want to walk, that doesn't require it, except in certain maybe extreme situations for very unique people who are just once in a while, like one in maybe 10,000, this particular person needs to have one of these just because they're locked. They have to unlock their mind. That's the only way we can figure it out. Beyond that, there's lots of ways to do things without it, and where you keep your control of the experience.
That's perfectly described, and I really enjoy it because I don't want anyone to think that I'm like, anti drugs, or that I'm going to judge you for whatever you do, or but I exactly what you just said. I think there's a time and a place for some people, and that most of the time it's taking something from you, and you really, like you said, you described that perfectly. Like, what are you giving away? Do you even know what you're giving away, and is it really something you want to give away? Probably
Right.
not.
You
Um,
know.
well, I have loved our foray into the deeply spiritual, and it's awesome. But I guess we should also talk about, your other work. And one
Talk
thing,
about whatever interests you. I mean,
yeah.
this is, it's your channel, it's your interview. You talk about whatever you want.
Well, it's perfect too because fans of the show know at this point that almost everything I do is laden with the spiritual, no matter what it is. So they're used to it. But I did want to get into some of these things because I have some questions about a lot of different stuff that you brought up, especially like I
Sure.
think we talked about before the show on Freeman Fly's epic show. Always so awesome. I love Freeman so much. And you talked about one of the things that was so fun because I love wordplay, and I feel like words have meaning beyond what we really generally accept or understand. And you talked about the word founded, and I loved your take on that, and I hoped you would share it with people.
Yeah, I guess that sort of comes out from digging into the history of our more recent world of the last 200 years, of these sort of strange stories of how cities went from two or three cowboys to 50 to 100,000 people with massive buildings and
Yeah.
whatnot overnight. And generally, of course, when a city is started, it's claimed, particularly in North America, it's claimed to have been founded, which just means found dead.
Found
And
dead.
and yeah, and this leads into the concept of, were these cities, particularly places like North America and Australia, New Zealand in the 17, 1800s, were they really empty pieces of land that were started from nothing, or were there old civilizations that had been there, and that certain things were just cleaned up, fixed up, and pretended that they were just built?
Yeah.
It's a huge question to ask once you start digging into it.
It's a huge question to ask, and you have so many pieces of evidence and just uncanny things that do not make sense. Um, And one of those things that I thought was interesting was that you pointed out, and it just reminded me of like every history class I've ever had when you said this. And I was like, how have I never noticed this pattern? But it seems like every single city that we can look at in North America, especially, just burned down sometime in the 1800s. And that, implies that it was 100% wood. But then we look at these pictures and it's not all wood. So why did we have all of these fires all at the same time? And what do you think about all of that?
Yeah, I mean, after, obviously, first they went into all the world's fairs, which are the strangest events in our history, and I think in the recent history, and really important because it might be linking to a reset the word, I'm going to use that word, a reset that
Yeah.
happened a couple hundred years ago, something we may be going through now. I think that's why this stuff still has importance to where we are, because we're living history right now. Like this moment in time is actually, we're living huge history,
Literally
and
today, when we record
literally
this,
today.
is the
Yeah,
20th.
like
And
right now. And um, so I'm also trying to suggest to people, don't go too deeply into too many things if it's not helping you with where we are right now. Um, but certainly when we look at this period of time, and like you say, every city, especially in North America, yeah, had these fires, and they they run through the entire period, at least the way history, the narrative describes it, through the 100 years of the 1800s. And yes, thankfully we have photographs, and all of those photographs are not just brick and stone, massive amounts of bricks and stone, but the brick and stone is extremely melted, really high quality stone melted. And in fact, many cases, the stone has been sheared, like it's been laser cut. Uh, and I remember showing these to some building contractors who deal with fire damage, and they've all said, there's no fire I've ever seen that looks like this. Is not a fire. In fact, one of them even asked me, who bombed this? Because to me they look more like Dresden in 1944 than they do anything else. So you have to start wondering, is the narrative of these just random fires going across North America truth, or are we seeing the remnant of a war that we weren't told happened?
And if it was a war, what is it do you think that happened? Like who is fighting who and which technology and or do you think it might have been natural? Like Douglas Vogt was on the show recently and he talks about this nova that our sun goes nova every once in a while cyclically and that could maybe cause some of this.
This is one of the issues when people want to talk about history, and it's something that I still get it on my channel. People sending me things like, well, why don't you go more into this and talk about how this is what happened? But we don't know what happened,
We
and we're
don't know.
never going to know what happened.
Hmm.
I wasn't at Gettysburg in 1860s. I don't know. And the best we can do is tear apart the narrative to see, does the narrative, the way the group presenting it to us, does it make sense or not? If it's not, then we can remove false, and we can come up with some fairly decent theories based on what we have left. But we will never ever know for sure what was there in our history, at least probably while we're alive, or unless we develop a time machine for ourselves or something. And that's a hard thing, I think, for some people to deal with, because they feel that there should be an answer, there should be a way to get an answer, or yeah, I've looked into this, I've found my way to get an answer, and they may in fact actually, maybe they are right, but we'll never know.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it challenging. So all you can actually throw out, like you say, is a theory, and but I know that could change tomorrow with completely different information. I can say, yeah, the theory I have is that doesn't make sense. So every theory I have is just, it's just there as a talking point. It's not anything else. What is interesting, though, to finally answer your question,
Mm-hmm.
is the H.G. Wells novel War of the Worlds came out in 1894, and I'm wondering, is that just a novel or is that like a documentary?
Is it like their way of it, some people think they have to like admit the truth or karmically have to tell us what's going on before it happens or whatever, and maybe that's one of their little like, okay, here you go, that's what happened, now let's all pretend it's fiction and move on.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying yes or no. It's
Right.
just one of these things to really contemplate, because when Orson Welles did the radio broadcast of that's what he did, right? The War of the Worlds is what he did in 1938. The people went bizarrely insane, right? Like, I mean, they literally were committing suicide. And you have to wonder then, excuse me, is there some kind of genetic imprint of something like this in our past that when it appears externally, it triggers like an internal memory? So I just, again, for those of you watching, I'm not saying that's
No.
the truth. I'm not saying that's the answer, but I am saying there's some just odd coincidences involved with the book and the you know the
The
radio
reaction.
play and the way Hollywood has presented certain things for the last 30 or 40 years,
Mm.
that makes you wonder if there really is some connection to it all, much deeper than it seems like on the surface.
Very good points, and especially with if there are sort of like laser like precision to some of these cuts, then that might indicate the same. And but like you said, we'll never know, and it could be many things, such as maybe like breakaway part of civilization that is hiding underground and has way better technology than us and comes out every once in a while, or it could be so many things, so it is impossible, we may never know.
And
um,
the challenge, of course, is the timeline itself. I mean, we're told these events happen. Oh, we're told that the Chicago fire was 1871 and this fire was 1864, and we don't know.
we have no idea.
We
Yeah.
have no idea about anything. I mean, we really don't know what our calendar, the one we use, is not really linked to anything. There's no star calendar. There's no astronomical link to our calendar at all. So we can't track anything by an event based on a star date that, we can for sure, at least like ancient cultures. So it's just a number that's been presented by, probably some guy, probably in a university somewhere, that says this is the date that it happened. So, don't question me,
Right.
as opposed to, well, we have no idea. 1871, 1771, 771, who knows? And so that again, it throws a whole thing out the window, that probably beyond, like I'm 50 now, so say about maybe 20 years before my birth, I'm probably going to say you can kind of have a fairly decent, at least year by year, understanding of what happened. I'd even say before that, it's all up for question marks.
Yeah. And I think people have a hard time sometimes wrapping their mind around that, but we can see in real time, like you said, we're living history and we can see how easy it is to forget things that happened even in very recent history that were well documented. They just get lost, amongst the narrative that is weaved
Yeah.
for us, and intentionally so. So it seems even easier to do back before technology had sort of many lenses on every moment.
Right, and I think that's what these World's Fairs are for. Those fairs, I think, part of because those things are so strange. But one of the things I think they were doing was creating the history that they wanted the world after that time to believe.
Mm.
So these were giant expositions designed to, without television and without it was a brainwashing. It was a giant brainwashing operation, is what I think they were.
Yeah, and I like some of the details you pulled out about that were just little things that you might not think about otherwise. But there was stuff about the cameras and the photographs that I thought was interesting. If you want to share that with people.
Um, you mean at the Chicago Fair where they weren't allowed to take photos, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just for anyone who probably someone by now who've seen me before, these expositions were massive 700 to 1,000 acre sites
That's
claimed to have been
crazy.
built. Yeah, claimed to have been built in less than 2 years with buildings that were like the one at the Chicago, one of them at the Chicago Exposition could hold 300,000 people, and these things were monstrous buildings with towers and domes and fine ornate artwork and just massive structures that as soon as the fair was over were torn down, blown up, dynamited, and destroyed. And it's the
That's
stupidest thing you can ever even possibly contemplate. And I'm now starting to get a lot of criticism, a lot of uh, a lot of other what you call standard historians are starting to attack what I say now because
you're
they're
getting too much
trying to
attention.
hold to the they're trying to hold to the everyone knew that you could build better in the 1880s than you can now, and um, but none of these people are going to people who actually build things like I did, building contractors, and ask them, how can you get this done in 1891 with the materials in materials and equipment and technology available? And what's the strangest of it all is you're building these massive buildings. I mean, these things are huge. Take a look at some of the photos, people. They're just huge. They never once build a road to bring the materials in. All the roads and everything are kept as dirt road. They're just dirt everywhere. So you're assuming they're bringing horse and buggy carts to bring in hundreds upon thousands of tons of stone and wood and equipment and whatever else, but you don't take a couple of days to build a road first.
Yeah.
So all of these things, the more you look into them, the crazier they get. And so you have to start asking, well, what are these things really for? Why were they doing them all over the world? And I think it was for some reason we're looking at an indoctrination program of almost like hypnosis at the time into the population.
Yeah. Indoctrination, hypnosis, mass propaganda campaign, and then just destroy the building. We put all this effort into it and all these resources, and now we just want to get rid of it and move on. Like we're erasing the evidence.
Right, right. So you have to start asking, did they really build them, or again, were they there for a long time beforehand? And this was a way of using them one last time for energetic purposes, and like you say, almost producing a magic spell, and then ridding the whole thing and let the spell continue. Because I relate that quite similar to our world right now, just it being done a different way. That we're actually same thing. We're under a magic spell right now. We're actually under a though the whole world has like a frequency now that if you can't vibrate above the frequency, if you can't hold yourself, that frequency level is really dropped, and most of the population has dropped with it automatically, and it becomes quite a challenge for the few that haven't, because you're the gap now between you when before maybe you were a little ahead of seeing from other people, but it was you could still communicate. Now all of a sudden they dropped, so they're off the map. You're still exactly where you are. There's no communication possible, and that's really helped explain why I don't try to help the masses with the situation now, or even talk to too many people anymore about stuff like people that I know, because there's no there's no linking point anymore because literally the gap is too great.
Hey, all my YouTube peeps, if you're not yet in rogue.locals.com as a supporter, not just a member, but as a supporter, it's $2 a month. That's it. Or you can do more if you love the show and you want to support what I do. But if you are in there as a supporter, you get the last section of this interview, which has some amazingly beautiful, poignant nuggets of gold and just awesome insight. Super cool stuff that you don't want to miss about our connection to the ancient past, what is within us, and what this whole realm is really about, and what the sort of game is. So there's some really great stuff. I hope you go check it out, and I hope that you want to become a supporter of rogue.locals.com no matter what, just because you love the content, but also because you get perks like this and stuff that you're not going to see anywhere else unless you go become a supporter there. So please do support the show and grab this and more content that you have been missing if you haven't yet been a supporter. I love you all so much. I thank you for your support and can't wait to see you next time. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure we could talk for a lot longer, but we should probably wind down now. So I
Great.
love ending on that sort of message that you want to keep questioning no matter how far you go. But I also want you to share with people how they can find you, connect with you, all the various places that they can do that, how they can get your book and support you in the best way, and anything else that you want to share that you might have coming up or anything like that.
Okay. Wow. Well, actually, support. If the best way that anyone can support me is just decide you want to go inside and look for your own truth. That's actually the best you could ever do. That would be the greatest gift I would ever get from anybody.
That's awesome.
But if you're looking for stuff online, I guess for now my YouTube channel still exists. Who knows how long that's going to exist? But
True.
that's Howdie Mickoski Talks, and I've got a number of different stuff on there that you can look for in all of these areas. My website has the very wordy Egyptian-wisdom-revealed.com. I still don't know why I chose that long name, but if you used my own name, I'm sure it would come up anyway. I don't
True.
use it that much. It's more of like a director, but that exists. And if you want, there are sample chapters of my books though on my website, and of course they're at Amazon, at least that you can see more what they are by Googling my name. And then hopefully if you want to buy them at other places, you can search other booksellers and you can find who else carries the book as well to purchase. And I guess that would be the initial first stage, is to go look. And there's also other really good interviews. Like this was I consider this to be a really good interview. This was really well done.
Thank you.
And yeah. And there's others like this out there too with a number of people. So there's all these things. If you're interested, you can take a look around and see if I make any sense to you or not. And yeah, go from there.
Yeah, you have so much that you've done to help people uncover this. So I really hope people go check it out more. And I personally want to get all of your books and read them, which maybe then will result in further interviews that we can do down the road, which would be excellent. Yeah. But what are your final sort of thoughts or ideas or messages that you want to leave people with as we close down?
What would be a final question mark? Interesting. I guess it would be, I'll leave you with the idea of a small piece of Richard Rose's Jacob's Ladder, which was a wonderful, it's a massive detailed concept, but I'm just going to give one small piece that's useful. And that is, with the idea of a ladder, of course, the path to any sort of truth or knowing isn't really a ladder, it's just a metaphor. But the first thing you have to do is figure out where you really are on the ladder. Everybody wants to be farther ahead than they really are. So the first step is honesty, to know this is where I'm at. But once you know where you're really at, that's a gift, because now you know who you can get help from, which is one level above you. If you try to go 2 or 3 levels above you, they're going to sound crazy to you and they won't be of any help. So you'll know who you can get help from. More importantly, no matter where you are, there are people below you that you can help. It can be very simplistic help, but it's help nonetheless. And again, it's go one level down to the people who you can talk to and will understand you. You try to go 3 or 4 levels down, they think you're crazy, and there's no point in that. So this idea of learning where are you really on the scale really helps you then knowing who you can have as your friends, as your spiritual cohorts, and who are the ones that either are just they're a little beyond me now at this point, or I have to wait until they come up a little bit before I spend too much time talking to them, and this really helps you control your energy, save your energy, use your energy wisely, and still at the same time, there's always someone you can help them. There's always someone you can pass something on to, some of your experience that actually is, you may not think there is, but there is somebody just one level below you, and that one little thing you might be telling them, one little story you share might be enough to get them to join you where you are.
What a beautiful metaphor and offering for everybody. Thank you so much. And fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. And this has been your analog, electric, concentric dose of wisdom according to history's undoing and mystic Howdie Mickoski. Howdie, thank you so much for being here and for being you.
Thanks again for having me.
Awesome. While the long lines of history fall behind us into a pit of darkness, and when we find a light to shine back there, we see disheveled mannequins and cutout scenery lazily painted with finger paints. But behind that, with the help of some spelunking historians, we see that there's actually an opening, and something shines beyond. And if we are diligent enough to go climbing down the tunnels and pathways ourselves, we find there are caverns filled with gold and precious gems. They were not gathered there and hidden to keep us without material wealth. They were gathered here to keep us without spiritual wealth. And knowing who we are, where we came from, and what we come from is powerful beyond measure. Because the parasites can only keep us hostage with our delusion and consent. And once you've found the gems, you give them neither. Until you discover the gems hidden of your spiritual human history, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.
I heard the man, they at it again, and I'm out to tell the truth once more. That's right. It's on the cracking, unknown in the house. APOGZ, that's right. Hitting the stereo near you. Truth is the best thing, and it's on. Yo, I once thought that I wanted to get Denver on track, but there's something more bigger than that. Something lurking, waiting to blow this state right off the map. A hidden agenda related to September. Doves carved up on the wall next to the highway. Up in the concrete, while rolling home next to where I stay. With state's destruction, like Lockheed Martin malfunction. While NORAD's in the mountain anticipating our next move. My heart's jumping and I'm like, fuck waiting. While crooked taxes are burning a hole in my pocket. With a dollar bill in the pyramid that's watching. Instead of having a capstone on top of it, to have an eye with a fast surprise while you're flossing it. Greedy niggas jocking it, politics plotting it. So who you vote for really doesn't mean shit. So save your energy from being drained by the enemy. Skull and bones of Freemasonry, envisioning dreams of them chasing me. Skull and bones of Freemasonry, envisioning dreams of them chasing me. Skull and bones of Freemasonry, secret agencies with a plan to dominate all of man. Check the records of DIA, strange murals and paintings similar to the ones next to the highway. With pyramids and flames underneath them looking like they're about to fly away. I can't be tripping, but it sounds like I'm on acid. Most people slipping, taken below DIA held captive in the near future, where they won't hesitate to reinstate new laws for a bigger cause. I'm talking about established civilian concentration camps, introducing the military's labor programs. Expand your mind just a little bit, forget the little shit before you witness the belittlement of your people. Expand your mind just a little bit, forget the little shit before you witness the belittlement of your people.
Feds ain't stretching the truth, the script that he's spitting is true. Pay attention to what's going on or it might happen to you. When it's happening too, cellular communication monitor, behavior studied and controlled through chemicals bombing nerves. Thomas Murder Jesus ain't got anything to do with the religious cynic, where experiments cage and lace in terms of accepting limits. Things they can't explain in the sky when I'm in the Rockies. Chakra systems limited due to the voltage overhead pop. Mind control victims, slap clips and machine guns for recess. FCC will help us speak less, manipulate us through weak feel right non-fiction with the CIA trying to kill me filthy. Talking about the underground facility at DIA, no one feel that place laced with hints. Notice whenever I return home, black sun references in a new world Masonic capstone. Croy and Area 51 workers the building, I don't mean to rant. In the face of an emergency, it doubles as a FEMA camp. Reaction, solution, trickery, repeated through history. NORAD's listening in using technology, tracking where you piss. I might be paranoid or just facing the fact. Better watch what you say, it's another day under the Patriot Act. Expand your mind just a little bit, forget the little shit before you witness up a little bit of your people. Expand your mind just a little bit, forget the little shit before you witness up a little
The idea is to bring people to the point where they are helpless, passive, and unable to assert their own creative power to form anything else. Success for people like this is measured in terms of money, which they then translate into power.
Corruption and violations of the Constitution. Secret societies, the push for one world government. I'd like to get corruption and violations of the Constitution.
The idea is to bring people to the point where they are helpless, passive, and unable to assert their own creative power to form anything else.